This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with you this afternoon, this morning, or this evening, whenever you're watching this or listening to us. As always, thanks for always listening and subscribing to the podcast or our YouTube channel, or listening to us live on our national radio network. As always, we encourage you, if you want to pick up the phone and give me a phone call, you can always do that by scheduling a 30-minute phone call by going to talkwithscottcarson.com. But anyway, guys and gals, I know that so many of you guys out there as business owners, whether you're experienced, kind of getting your feet wet, or brand new to it, are all looking to do different things, to grow your business, to figure out, what do I need to do next, or what do I need to do to really grow your business. And we're really fortunate today to have who's known across the country as America's business alchemist. He has been helping business owners and entrepreneurs break free of inertia and accelerate to the future that they dream of. And I know that as we get in through this COVID and Corona, as we get into the fourth quarter, many of you are planning things for the next year, starting to get rocking and rolling already, like I am. So we are honored to have my buddy Bill Prater join us today on the Note Closer Show. What's going on, Bill? Glad to have you.
Good to be here. Thanks for the great introduction, my man.
Anytime, man, anytime. So you work with so many business owners and entrepreneurs out there, and with our listeners being real estate investors and trying to do some great things, I'm sure you've probably got a short list of things that you see entrepreneurs struggle with on a regular basis, whether it's limiting beliefs or actions that keep them from really seeing a lot of growth momentum and moving on. You want to share any of those things with us?
Yeah, sure. And I think I'll give a little more context to my background, which I think would help, because I've really only done two things in my life, both of which focused on helping entrepreneurs and business owners. So really one thing with two different sort of approaches. Number one, as I used to own and sold an investment banking firm, Scott, and I think you know this background, but I raised a little over $1.7 billion in relatively small chunks. By that I mean 2 or 3 million to maybe up to 25 or 30 million, roughly in that range. And those were investments directly into businesses. Mm-hmm. So not into a project like a real estate project, but into the business directly. Then I sold that business and then continued helping mentor the same group of people, entrepreneurs and business owners. And through all of that experience, I think the best way to kind of get your head around it as a business owner, entrepreneur, is that it's just literally another investment. It's another investment. And so when you make your investment, either writing a check or a series of checks, or going without your paycheck or whatever you're doing to finance your business, including getting an outside investor to put some in, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is get a return on your investment. Makes sense?
Totally makes a lot of sense. A return on investment and even a return on time a lot of times too for you.
Oh, well, now I'm getting to that particular point. So I look at businesses. Now, we're talking about private businesses now. Of course, we can go to call the stockbroker up and say, I want to buy some stock in, let's say, for example, Apple Computer. That is a business, no doubt, but we're talking about businesses that we own ourselves. So there's really what I consider to be 3 stages. Let's call those horizontal stages. Okay. And then 3 vertical stages. So horizontal and then vertical. So here's what I mean by that. When you just get started, hopefully when you just get started, and it doesn't last forever, is that, and I'll use the term boss. Scott, you and I are bosses. The people listening to us are bosses. You could use the word owner, but I like boss. It's a little bit more powerful. So when you start, it goes like this. Boss is the business. In other words, we just start and we do everything. And it's a combination of we're the guys with the idea, and so we're going to do it all because it's got to be done right. Well, that is a absolutely unscalable model, and nobody's going to buy it. And you're not going to make enough money to invest with Scott in real estate or anything else, because you and your business are exactly the same. You're joined at the hip. So moving horizontally, the next stage, by the way, believe it or not, 83% of the businesses that start never make it to the second stage. And that's what I call a boss dependent business, meaning that you've got people, you've got staff, maybe they're virtual assistants, maybe they're contractors, but you've got other people helping you, but the business depends on you, meaning that you're the person that all the decisions have to go through. Or if you're going to hire somebody, you're the one that has to interview them at the very end before the person is hired. If there's going to be some sort of a bonus paid to your staff, you're the one that makes that decision. That's a boss-dependent business. You know what? Nobody's going to buy that business. So it's not really worth anything, right, Scott, except what it's generated as far as income. And sometimes people can have a pretty nice business that's boss dependent. Now, it's never going to be sold, but it does enable you to make a lot of potential extra money. You can take that extra money and you can buy a note that, for example, that a bank is foreclosed on. So that would be phase number 2. Make sense so far, Scott?
Totally makes a lot of sense out there. Yeah.
Now, for all of you that are listening, I can't get your feedback. I'm going to use Scott as your surrogate.
Well, that's the thing. We see a lot of our students that do that. They start off, they are the business. They may add this is too, but they're still the focal point of having to make all the key decisions. And it takes obviously into the third phase on your horizontal,
right. Yeah.
journey.
And the third phase is where you've got a business, which I call boss independent, meaning that you're not essential, you're not vital, it's not important. So if you've got a business like that, and if Scott, for example, Scott or I happen to like it, well, we could buy that business and say goodbye to you because the business would be independent of you. So those are the three, if you will, horizontal stages. You and the boss in your business are the same, a business where the business depends on you. And finally, third stage is where your business is totally independent of you and can operate on its own. So you can get on the phone, call Scott, say, hey, Scott, what do you got? And Scott can say, here's the deal, come to this meeting, go online, I'll have a Zoom call, and I'll explain it all to you. And you can go do that without worrying about your business. Those are the three, what I call horizontal stages. And each of you listening can easily put yourself someplace along that continuum. You might be just, making the transition, whatever, but you can envision yourself. Maybe a best way to say it is trapped all the way to free. Okay.
Or going from the self-employed to the business owner, truly a business owner aspect that people are familiar with the cash flow quadrant and that kind of stuff.
Right, that's a very good point. I think because a lot of times people will look at you as a business owner and say, oh, lucky you, you don't have to work for Microsoft anymore. You're so lucky. And you're going, yeah, all I got to do is just, I work like crazy. I work 75 hours a week. Not at all unusual when you're in that first kind of camp. But people think you're doing right. You're the only one that knows that you're not. Maybe your partner knows too. Okay, now when we get to this business independent stage, now it's time to move vertically. So by moving vertically, I mean, let's call everything in the first 2/3 for sure would be ordinary businesses, solopreneurs, and small business owners with a staff of some sort. Those are ordinary businesses. In other words, what I mean by that is if you look at the bell curve of businesses, your business, if you've got one of those, is someplace in the middle of your niche or your industry, et cetera. So now let's get over here to, if you will, the scarce land. There aren't very many people over here that have gotten anything resembling a business that's independent of you. But it could be still ordinary. You're still in the middle. Maybe you're a little bit right shifted, but you're in the middle of the industry norms, if you will. So where can you go from here? Well, kind of vertical up the elevator now. You go up the elevator, the next stage that you're going to get to is extraordinary. So you've gone from an ordinary business to an extraordinary one. Now it's worth much more money. People are drawn to it. They're asking how they can invest with you, how they can buy it from you, etc. Scott, you've experienced that sort of thing yourself in your own business, I know. And so that's an extraordinary business. And there aren't many. That we're now talking about maybe 3, 4, 5% of the whole niche, the whole industry becomes extraordinary. But there's more, because you can take an extraordinary business and make it become preeminent. So if you think about Scott Carson's business, it's a preeminent business. It's one that's internationally, for certain nationally, right, Scott?
That's correct.
Probably internationally known. You yourself, you know where you physically are. You're listening in, and you're thinking, "Yeah, I know all about Scott. He's an elite player in his industry." And so, extraordinary to preeminent, ordinary, extraordinary, preeminent. Now, when you get to be preeminent, is there more? Yes, there is. There's market domination or market mastery. And that's where you look at, if you think about public figures, people that have companies that have reached that position, people like Elon Musk with Tesla, actually Elon Musk maybe even with SpaceX. So those are market masteries, ones that are like number one in their position. And so that's kind of the, if you will, the goal. Move from you are the business to the business is independent of you. And then once you get there, start building on that. The other thing that happens, and Scott, you know this, people have in their brain that as you make that kind of move, you go from working 70 hours to 75 to 80 to 90 to 100 to every single waking moment. And the exact opposite is true. The exact opposite. Now, I'm not saying that Elon Musk doesn't work, but he doesn't have to do it if he really didn't want to. Richard Branson, who's got a company, several companies that are market masters, the number one player in his industry. You don't have to work. So what does that mean? You can start thinking about alternative forms of investment. So that's the quick summary. I've seen that as somebody investing in the companies to now where I mentor and train business owners and their senior management teams to make the journey I just talked about.
Now, where do you see, I mean, there's obviously on that horizontal where you go from being the boss and business be the same thing, to having a team where it's still boss dependent. That's really probably the biggest jump initially, as you said, going to that aspect of things. Where do you see the bottlenecks or the mind blocks fall in? Is it the fact that they still believe they have to do everything? Do they and we're all, as entrepreneurs, I think, a little bit of a control freak of some sort.
Sure.
Is it learning that delegation, or just trying to step away and allow their team to fail and learn from their failures to grow?
Well, not everyone, but a lot of people are kind of hardwired into seeking, if you will, what appear to be bargains. In other words, if you can get by with an inexpensive pair of shoes, well, they're fine. They got a sole on them, and you can lace them up and stuff like that. And a lot of people, unfortunately, Scott, will do that. Have that same sort of thinking when they think about people, staff, They think, gee, I need, let's just pick we'll pick a title, a job title. I need a project manager. Well, project managers are the same as baseball players. They range from little leaguers to all-stars. There's a big range. So if you look at a project manager, little leaguers to all-stars, if you really genuinely want to be free of your business and rich, then you've got to get your brain around the idea that you can't cheap it out. You can't cheap it out with people. You can't cheap it out by saying, okay, I got to figure out how to buy some notes, some loans from the banks in some cheap way. No. That's not what you want to do. You want to buy the highest quality loan you possibly can, and then figure out, if I get this high quality loan, I got a good chance of making the kind of money that I want. So mistake number one, I think, Scott, is not hiring anybody, not hiring anybody to delegate, or hiring somebody that they can't delegate to because the person doesn't have enough skill. And so one, trying to do it all yourself. Two, cheapening it out when you hire people. So ultimately, and this is easy for Scott and me, ultimately, we want to hire somebody that's much more skillful than we are, that can do everything that we ever thought about much better than we did or are able to do, because then it's so easy to delegate because we know they'll be doing the thing better. Now, and then we can effectively promote ourselves from basically being a doer to being a thinker. And that's kind of the ultimate goal. So that's mistake number one. So let's call that kind of trying to get by with a cheap team. Number two, and Scott, you're a master of this. Number two is to make sure that if you own a business, any sort of a business, that you operate it with a system, a methodology of operations. Far too many people operate their businesses in what I call a whack-a-mole fashion. You know, if a problem comes up, they try to deal with it. If an opportunity comes up they try to deal with it. For example, I guess we would call the pandemic a problem that we're all in as a problem. And many people, Scott, weren't ready for it. I mean, the truth is, I didn't know that was going to be the problem, but I knew there's always a big problem. Always a big problem. There's always a big problem. Just have to be prepared for that. Same with opportunities. There's always opportunities. But if you're working as hard as you can possibly work, consuming all of your hours, it doesn't matter what the opportunity is. Scott can call you up and say, guess what? I've got a real fantastic deal. And if you're not ready for new opportunities, it'll just sail right by you. So that's number two. Number one is trying to cheap it out with a team. And number two is trying to operate instinctively or reactively, etc. And the kind of the flip side of that is buying and trying a bunch of shiny pennies, the next new thing. And it's really all that kind of fits in there as well. So let's call that all system, team system. And then the third common mistake is that people in general, business owners, we're talking about all of us listening, and you and I, Scott, we've been taught that dreaming and so forth and so on is all for kids. That's for kindergartners. Because when you can become an adult, you got to think like an adult. You got to deal with the situation that you're around. You got to operate within your capabilities or operate within your resources. That's what you have to do. So that's the third mistake, is not allowing yourself to imagine a future that has no limits whatsoever. No limits whatsoever. And that means to start thinking immediately like Richard Branson. You might be a little solopreneur, but think, I'm going to dominate this market. So that's it. Mindset, system, team.
Well, that's a big thing too. Is I think you hit the nail right on the head. A lot of people stop dreaming. I mean, they get used to doing their day in, day out, job, and they forget about that, to dream big. And that's where, if you really want to accomplish it, you've got to set big goals, and then kind of, I hate to say the word, but it's kind of, deconstruct or back engineer what it's going to take to get to those, whether it's numbers wise, whether it's hiring, whether it's income wise, lead sources, whatever you're producing or what you're working on. You've got to know those numbers to get. And one of the big things we focus on is our KPIs. We're always telling people, like, hey, if you want to hit an income goal with notes, you've got to make so many offers because you're only going to close on so many. That means making so many phone calls or so many emails out to asset managers. And it's not you doing everything. You've got to learn to delegate to either, like you said, assistants, VAs, or vendors, so that you can keep doing the things that you need to do in that forward thinking, that dreaming a bigger picture and moving on down the road versus getting stuck in the, I guess you could say, like, I think Michael Gerber maybe coined it the best, the E-myth, where you're the boss trying to do everything and you're too much backward looking versus forward thinking, right?
Yeah, and one little sliver in that little whole mix you just teed up for my mind. So all about torpedoes, right?
Yep.
So back in World War II, if you were a submarine captain, you spent days, maybe even weeks, well, certainly days, trying to figure out where your adversary was going to sail their ship, so that you can line your submarine up so when you fired the torpedo, it would intercept your target and make it sink. So it takes a huge amount of preparation and planning and timing and patience and all that stuff, while the target gets to port and it's out of your sight already. A lot of business owners, Scott, run their businesses that way. They think, if I'm going to get involved in buying notes, loans, real estate or otherwise, I'm going to study, plan, think, and then all of a sudden the window's gone. So, but a modern torpedo, a submarine captain today, if there's some sort of a problem, like a destroyer coming to get him, he or she can fire the and does immediately fire the torpedo. So they take action now, and then they steer the torpedo. So the lesson in all of that is that the people listening to us, you really need to take action immediately and then steer. Scott just told us, hey, if you're going to buy a note, you don't look, finally you got the note, you make the offer, only to find out it closed yesterday. So get out there, get the activity going, measure the KPIs, if you will, the conversion ratios and so forth, and make adjustments. Raise your price, lower your price, change your geography, work with different banks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the key there is really, and that's a little bit of part of this thing about systems, but it's execution. Planning is important, but for example, if somebody wants you to teach a class, all you need to do is to be, what do you think? It's got a half an hour ahead of the class?
Yeah, that might be about
all
right.
You need.
That's all you need.
You don't need to know the whole year. You're
right.
Just teaching. You're just taking the first Monday of the first day of the class. So get ready for that. And then that evening, get ready for the next day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a lot of school teachers that are doing that with lesson plans. What am I going to teach about tomorrow? Let's figure this all out. But you said something really good there. So many people, they study. Hey, I got to have all my ducks in a row. I got to know A to Z. And that's the case. That's not always the case. I mean, it's never going to be A to Z out the boards. Maybe A, B, C, and then get rocking and rolling. Know the basics and then start pulling the trigger and learning. I hate to say that on the job training, but learn while you're earning a lot of times,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. No, I think that's, I mean, if those of us if you will, went to college and got some sort of a degree, and then you go get a job, and the employer says, would you graduate? Yeah. Would you graduate in? They don't even bother to ask you because they know it doesn't do them any good. They're going to hire you and teach you what to do. It's absolutely true. And then to your point, I think what you just told everybody that's listening is that you don't need, in fact, you should not try to learn, if you will, Scott's field to the extent that Scott knows it. And you're much better off to decide, do I want to deal with Scott and his company? Just make that decision. Then get started. And that's the same with hiring somebody. You don't need to know about project management to hire a project manager. You don't need to know about Facebook advertising in order to hire somebody to put a Facebook ad in place for you. And you don't, by the way, want to do Facebook ads just because somebody told you it was a fancy idea.
Yeah, how many shiny objects have entrepreneurs chased over time? Because that will take you away. And the power of saying no is just as valuable as saying yes to success a lot of times, because that's the thing we see, especially in the real estate space. You see people going from workshop to workshop to workshop with the idea that I'm gonna put another tool in my tool belt. Well, if all you're doing is nailing nails, you don't need a jigsaw, you don't need a power, a jackhammer if you're never gonna get around to using that aspect of it. And that's the thing that drives me bonkers all the time is entrepreneurs do exactly like I heard, what about Facebook ads? Well, your business doesn't need Facebook ads right now. You need A, B, and C, and get good at A, B, and C before you add D, E, and F, and know your systems before you start delegating. Know what you're going to be doing, but know what you need to delegate to somebody else. I've heard it said before, not the how, but the who needs to do it for you. I think a lot of people are like, I need to learn it myself. How do I do this? No, you need to find somebody who can do it for you versus the how.
Yes, but you have to get things in order. You just coached this. You don't want to. We're picking on the Facebook ad, but it's any shiny penny that somebody tells you about that you say that sounds great. Let's do that. No. First decide what you want to do. I want to get my business to have twice as much revenue next year as it does this year. Okay, fine. Now that you've made that decision, let's talk about the potential ways that you can do that. For example, you don't have to do anything other than double your price. If, in fact, somebody will pay that, you'll double your sales. You don't need any Facebook ads to double your price. You might need a little nerve, but you don't need any Facebook ads. So first, dream big. Second, put the plan in place. Third, get the resources, which might be Facebook ads.
It might be, like you said, might just be increasing your price or improving your systems. It may just be adding value instead of being the cheapest to try to attract a higher clientele. There's a lot of things that you can do without a lot of work out there. And a lot of people, I think, it sometimes just need somebody, an outside source to kind of look it over the process. Okay, well, have you thought about this? Well, no, because a lot of times we're so bogged down in the whack-a-moles, we don't see the opportunities or the simple solutions. Huh, Bill?
Indeed.
Now, where do you see, when you're sitting down and talking with business owners and you've kind of figured out where they're at, is there any type of assessment or any type of steps that you like to take to kind of help maybe flush out their goals or their dreams or things that maybe they see themselves in to help them find success?
That's a great question. And the answer is no.
Okay.
And here's what I mean by that. Each of us are in our lives, each of us are with our investments, each of us are with our businesses. We're at wherever we are now as a result of everything we did in the past. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do us a great deal of good. It's not much value in going back and looking at all that stuff. Let's just say to ourselves, as of today, we are here. What do we need to do now to move the ball the farthest distance forward? And that varies from person to person to person. But no, Scott, what I do when I start working with somebody new to me is I just simply say, where are you taking this thing? What's your dream? What's your hope? Even if they say, I don't have one. And I say, okay, imagine that you're back in kindergarten, Sarah. If you're back in kindergarten, did you have a dream? Yes, I did. I dreamed of being a queen. Great. Put that into your business, dream that. Now, what singular thing can you do right now that would move you the furthest way forward? We don't want much thinking, by the way, because we already said, don't overthink this stuff. Right. Just take action, because we can steer ourselves once we're in motion. We just want to go forward. So that's a long answer to a quick question. We are where we are as a result of everything in the past. Let's decide where we want to go and what the next step should be. And by the way, if you've got yourself and 5 employees, then we need 5 people to decide what the next step is going to be. If we've got yourself and 500 employees, we need to have 500 people decide what they need to do to move the ball forward. What you do not want is to have people deciding on their own what in the world they're going to do. We have to say, this is where we're going. What are you going to do to move us in that direction, George?
I love that, because it's basically making sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Correct.
But also talking with your entire staff, because if they're on the front lines, they're the ones taking the phone calls or doing the work, that can often give you the insight that maybe you don't see because you're not the person doing or handling that specific position.
Absolutely. That's why you always ask each person, you say, Harriet, what could you do? If you don't get to do one thing today, what would that one thing be? And people, unless they're completely the wrong person on your staff, they'll be able to say, well, I probably should call up such and such a person and collect the $30,000 that we're owed. Good. Sounds like a plan. Okay, I commit to do that. And all of a sudden, tomorrow you've got $30,000 that you didn't have in the past.
Yeah, that's definitely, receivables are always a great thing. Always account receivables, one of the most important things to move that bottom line along. And then just making sure, looking at holes in our businesses. Where are we losing money? You know, we all sign up for a lot of different things that maybe we don't use effectively, or we've got software or other things that we can streamline to, I mean, even if it's not going out, it's staying in. That's sometimes just plugging the holes is just valuable.
Yeah, and a lot of times people say, well, they've got such and such an employee and they're not in sales, or they're not in a position where they can add revenue and so forth. We don't run our businesses on revenue. We run our businesses on net, which means the net cash flow. We can have a $20 million business in net negative 100,000. We can have a $100,000 business in net positive 100,000. So one thing I do for people, Scott, is particularly people on the front line, they know how to save money. So you can quickly explain to somebody, if you're making 10% net, that a $100 cost savings is equivalent to $1,000 sale. So somebody that can figure out how to save $100 is equal to the hot salesperson that closed a new training program for $1,000. So that's what I mean by each person instinctively knows what they need to do to move the ball forward, providing that the boss, Scott, says, this is where we're going. He sees them every day. Scott, you're going to tell me this is where we're going. Yes, every day I'm going to tell you where we're going. So you do things that are aligned with my vision and my dream and my kindergarten little guy, little Scotty.
When you think of kindergarten, I think of taking a nap might be one of the most effective things I miss in kindergarten.
That is a very good point. You're remembering the art of daydreaming.
Amen to that. Well, Bill, what's the best way for our listeners and audience to connect with you, to take it to the next level if they're looking for some help or looking for the Business Alchemist to kind of help them?
It turns out, Scott, I just finished a book. In fact, the book is not yet printed. But they just need to go to getbillsnewbook.com, getbillsnewbook.com. And then they, for zero cost and obligation, they'll get the PDF copy of that book. It's called Dynamic Growth, turning your business into a 24/7 ATM.
I love it. We all like hearing that sound of money kicking in there at 24/7.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Ka-ching, exactly. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the Note Closer Show and sharing that stuff. I hope everybody out there takes advantage of that. GetBillsNewBook.com. Download it. Great article. I mean, great book out there for you guys. And check out what Bill's doing. Bill's got some great stuff. He's got rock and roll besides the new book. And as always, we need advice. We need counsel. Hey, don't be afraid to reach out to people to seek counsel, because you never know what an outside view will do for your business and help you take it to a whole new level. So go out, take some action, everybody, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.
Thank you a lot.
Thanks, Bill.